Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. I've got an exciting topic to talk about today, something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and talking to my buddy Brad Woodall today about the importance of building up cash flow. And when you're a real estate investor, depending on where you are in your kind of business, or your kind of level of business maturity, we all start off wholesaling and or fix and flipping, some combination of those things, getting some nice paydays. It's all great. But then at some point, if you're not keeping rentals, you look up and you say, hey, if my deal flow stops right now, I have nothing to show for all those efforts. So we're going to be talking about the importance of building up residual cash flow. Professional real estate investors know that it's not really about the real estate. In fact, real estate is just a vehicle to freedom. A group of over 100 of the nation's leading real estate investors from across the country meet several times a year at the Investor Fuel Real Estate Mastermind to share ideas on how to strengthen each other's businesses, but also to come together as friends and build more fulfilling lives for all of those around us. On today's show, we're going to continue our conversation of fueling our businesses and fueling our lives. I'm glad you're here. Hey, Brad, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, great to see you. Great to see you. Excited to see you here coming up at Investor Fuel in a couple more weeks.
Yeah, I get to drive up there this time. I don't have to.
Yeah, that's not too far. How far of a drive is that from?
4 hours.
Okay. Our event is in Nashville and Brad lives in Atlanta, so that's cool. So yeah, Brad is you've been. I'll have you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background, and we're going to talk a little bit about. I think you've been investing for a few years now and your volume's starting to ramp up and all that stuff. And you're kind of sensing the same thing of like, hey, I need to be keeping some more of these, right? I want to basically have some cash flow down the line instead of just these, good paydays, but nothing residual. But tell us a little bit about your background and how you found your way into real estate investing.
Yeah, so I'm like you said, I'm in Atlanta. I am a corporate refugee. Just hit my what's today? Today's the 9th. So in 3 days is my 2-year anniversary of quitting corporate America.
Nice.
Quit corporate America 2 years ago. And I started kind of doing the investing game in, let's call it 2015-ish. And then started really seriously like doing direct seller marketing 2016. I was just kind of dabbling in 2015. So I've been doing that since then, primarily wholesale. I say my business model is more of a marketing machine, generate leads, cherry pick the ones I want to keep or the ones I want to flip and wholesale the rest.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. I've got a team now that I've built out of a full-time leads manager. I have an acquisitions manager, and then I have a virtual assistant in the Philippines, and then me. I'm probably more involved than I should be, but I get bored easily, so.
Yeah. Well, you kind of have that engineering mindset too, so it's hard to not get your hands dirty all the time and constantly be tinkering with stuff.
Right, for sure. So that's me. Yeah. So built up the good. So last year, we just closed out 2019. We had 35 deals on the books. We closed 31 of them. Some of them carrying over to this week, closing afterwards. So I've doubled my business every year. We did 7, then 17, then 35. We'll call it 35.
Yeah.
And basically doubled revenue every year too. So that's kind of the business there. So
that's great. Yeah, and I recall the declaration. You were one of our first members. You were at the very first Investor Fuel meeting, which was a little over 2 years ago. That you kind of declared there, I am leaving my job by January 1st or whatever. I guess it wasn't quite January 1st. It was second week of January, something like that, right?
Yep.
And then I remember when you did it. So that was exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And scary as hell too, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. I still get scared to this day. Like,
yeah.
But yeah.
But kind of exhilarating because you're in control of your own destiny, right?
Oh, my time is really the whole reason I didn't join this business to make a bazillion bucks. I joined this business to have freedom.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yep. Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about, I know recently you started realizing that you should be keeping more of these as rentals, and we'll kind of talk about, kind of how other people can do that too, depending on where they are in their cycle. But talk a little about why you're kind of realizing now that hey, I've been wholesaling. You talked about your average wholesale fee recently, which is pretty respectable, but
Yeah.
how you start to realize, or why you're realizing that, hey, I need to keep some of these as rentals.
Well, when you pay Uncle Sam a lot of money, that hurts for one
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I'm about to send him a check next week for my quarterly.
Painful. Yeah.
So for one thing, but I always said when I got into this, I'm going to flip and I'm going to buy rentals, right? But you get in the midst of doing your deals, like, okay, I'll buy a rental on the next one. I'll buy a rental. I'll wholesale this one. I'll keep the next one. And you just don't do it. And then you don't hold yourself accountable. I actually recently joined like a small coaching program to do that, to have them hold me accountable to like keeping more rentals. And I just realized like this is a transactional business, right? I mean, we had great months last year. October was my best month ever. We might hit six figures in January this year. So like,
Right.
It's great, but you're only as good as your next deal, and things slow down during the holidays, and things are, it does this real estate.
Yep.
No matter
Roller
how hard
coaster.
we try to even it out, it's always like this,
Right.
So that's really why. And then I also realized like this is about passive income eventually. And my kids are young now, and if I need to start this now, and I need to do it. So by the time I have a 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, like I want to be able to enjoy the time with them when like really we can do a lot of stuff together, and we can now, but obviously as they get older, there's more and more you can do together. So
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell you, and it's painful because you're usually, the way it works, if you're doing it right, like some people keep rentals by default, or they keep the low equity ones because there's a small spread and they'll make money. It's more of a long-term bet. But if you're doing it right and you're foregoing some of those 10, 15, $20,000 wholesale fees that you might get otherwise, then you're locking in a bunch of equity up front. I mean, that's really kind of basically an investment in your long-term future, right? That's part of your retirement plan or kids' college fund, whatever you need it for. You're not losing that equity. You're just locking it away for a later date.
right. I mean, literally, I'm buying 2 rentals next week, and the amount of equity I'll have in those right off the bat is the equivalent to what I had in my 401k, like when I left corporate America, right? Just 2
Yeah.
properties in a matter of like 2 deals.
Right.
My net worth just increased like boom, just like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So
And there's some people actually that actually disagree with what I just said. I mean, I'm more of the type of, I want to get them paid off or paid down. There's some people that are like lever them forever and maximize your cash flow right now. But I've always used that as kind of more of my long-term nest egg. And the truth is most of my wealth now is tied up in rental properties. And so I have some dead equity out there, which is, I understand some challenges with that's not necessarily ideal, but my rental properties are cash flow more now. And, that's what it's all about for me.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk a little bit about, one of the challenges with keeping rentals or deciding to keep more is like back, you said a couple of years ago when you did 7 in a year, you couldn't keep any, right? You needed to ring the register on those. You really have to scale your business up to be able to pick and choose some, or make sure that you have enough money coming in every month to cover your overhead. Talk about that a little bit and how you really have to scale to be able to
Yeah,
keep,
like last year, there were some times where there were some properties that I had, and like, man, I need to keep this. I really need to keep this, but it's like, well, crap, American Express is knocking on the door, and I got to pay off marketing. I got to pay for marketing for the month,
Yep.
and I really shouldn't keep this one because I need to always keep a revenue bucket going because I got payroll to pay and all that stuff.
Yep.
And then so now when I've got some excess ones, I'm like, okay, we'll keep those, but you got to have a steady flow of leads and a good lead funnel to do that. And now I have that. So, and then also being able to buy them right. You got to buy them right. So my acquisitions manager, my newest guy, I'm on my 3rd one now, like he's good. Like he buys them deep. And
Yeah. Yeah, everybody has to kind of come up with their own mixes, or your kind of exit strategy mix, right? Like some people wholesale by default everything unless it's a good rental. Some people retail everything. I was more of the type of, I'll retail everything unless it's a real dog, then I'm going to wholesale it. And if it'd be a good rental and I can afford one that month, then I'll keep one. But I think that's part of the key is you have to be able to afford it. You have to be able to pay your overhead, make a respectable profit if that's what you need that month. And then anything on top of that is extra, and I can keep it as a rental, right? You have to cover your foundation first.
Sure. And I pay my, when I keep a rental, I have a sort of a flat fee that I negotiated with my acquisitions guy because he's taking it down, right? And I just pay him a flat fee on the rental. He kind of gets upset about it because he knows we can make more on a wholesale, but it's like, no, if I want to keep it as a rental, this is what I'm paying you on it, man.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So, and you got to pick and choose too. Like you don't want to one of the things I've learned, like everybody will learn this over time, probably after you already have some rentals that don't quite fit your criteria anymore. Because your criteria changes. Like,
Oh, sure.
I can tell you that I was kind of a B class type guy for our first few rentals. And then because I had a mentor that owns a ton of rental properties and he was more of a C and possibly borderline D class guy, that I moved in that direction because they seemed to cash flow more, but the turnover and the maintenance stuff is higher on those for sure. And that just took time to kind of realize that. And I look back now, and from an appreciation standpoint, my B class properties have definitely, they might not have cash flowed as much, or at least they weren't believed to as cash flow as much, but the appreciation has far outpaced the C class property. So you just kind of have to find your way and say, this is the type of property I want, right?
Right. And I'm such a laid back guy too. Like I don't like lots of stress in my life. I'm like easygoing. Like I want them with as little headache as possible, right? I'll take less cash flow if I don't have to deal with it as much. Like I'm okay with that,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is true. I would say our lower level properties, C class properties, there's more drama associated with. They're
Right.
just the type of tenant is just more transient. They're more likely to have to be chased for payment.
Sure.
They don't stay as long. We had somebody. We actually have kind of a B class property that I'll talk about right now. We just finished the remodel on it yesterday, and we've had a tenant there for 8 years. Now that's not typical, but it's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's back to the appreciation. I'll just kind of tell you the numbers. So I don't really trust Zillow numbers per se, but the Zillow value just for what it is, because we're not looking to sell it, so I didn't go run comps. So they say it's worth like 170 something, and we bought it for 30.
Nice.
Right, and it was like 2011, I think. So we've owned it for 9 years. Probably had one tenant in there for a year, which is more typical, and then another tenant for 8 years. And so it needed it needed like a $15,000 rehab.
Right.
But the value has just gone up tremendously over those past 9 years, and that's more typical of the B class properties that we have. Some of the C class properties, they've gone up in value a little bit, but they're still kind of turds.
Well, you got also so we'll do a plug for Investor Fuel here. You remember the first meeting when our buddy Todd in Birmingham came and was so stressed out, and Joe said, "Dude, you need to sell the dogs off.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
really need that many properties?" And he said, "No, it's just ego driven." And he came back to the next meeting 3 months later, and he had sold off 30 properties, and he's like, "I'm the happiest man alive."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to call the dogs every once in a while.
Right. So that's a great strategy. So
let's talk about the financing piece. So, when you're just wholesaling, even maybe doing some rehabs, if you're using hard money or other types of, like, rental financing is a different animal than, rehab grade financing typically. And if you're just wholesaling, a lot of times wholesalers are like, well, I don't even need money because, I'm just wholesaling everything. But so what happens is when you start to decide, hey, I need to start keeping more rentals, there's a process for that, right? You have to find lenders, you have to start kind of building those relationships. So let's talk about the importance of kind of building up financing for rentals.
It's through private capital, right? My deals I'm buying this week, I'm buying 2 this week and the next week. They're both from self-directed IRAs from other investors that I know that just have self-directed IRA money. And I've built that up through relationships and over time. But I guess one difference from me, you said with the wholesaling, like I still take properties down because I'm of the mindset, and some people say maybe I'm leaving money on the table. I don't contract on a property unless I'm comfortable buying that property myself.
Yeah.
Right. Because my reputation is more important to me than a buck.
Yeah.
So if I tell a seller I'm buying their house, now I've backed out of some during due diligence, right? But if I'm buying your house, I'm buying your house. Is it going to stress? I had one at the end of last year where I had to stress out at the last second because one of my lenders was out of money, and I had to go find another lender to be able to fund this deal and buy it. But it was a good deal, so I bought it and I took it down. We're wholetailing it. So I've got one of my goals this year is to raise more private capital and get more people like just that maybe have 100 to 150 grand that can lend, and then I'll just keep turning their money. And if I can have one person and I turn their money 3 times in a year and they're making a good return and I just refi them out every few months, right? If I can keep turning their money 3 times, okay, so I get one of them and I get one of them and I get one of them. That means I can buy, however many properties in a year. I'd love to get people at really low interest, long-term debt, but I got to build some relationships with, Grandma Susie that, has $500,000.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
For now, we'll just refinance them out into bank debt. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Local banks are pretty, that's a lot of our rental stuff has been through local, like our fix and flip stuff has been through private lenders and our,
right.
You could do it however you want, but of course, yeah, you're right. You're always looking for, rate matters a lot more with long-term money.
Yes. Right.
Like if you're using hard money, it's sometimes a necessary evil, but it's not that big of a deal because you're turning it pretty fast usually.
Right.
But if, over like going from 10% to down to 6% over a 15-year term or more is a huge difference.
Huge cash flow.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
yeah. So what have you done to kind of build some of those, those personal relationships for long-term financing?
So through networking, right?
Yeah.
Like one of the lenders that's funding me on one of my rentals this week is someone who's funded some deals for a friend of mine. And he was like, oh, we should connect you guys. And all of my lenders that I use now for private lending, I've just built through relationships, and they see what I'm doing. And through that, like one of the wholesales we just bought, me and this guy have known each other for years, and I've never borrowed money from him. But then I was like, hey, you want to fund this deal? And he's like, yeah, sure. Because he knew I'm in the game. I know what I'm doing. I'm not some newbie that has no idea what I'm doing. Right.
Right.
And I've just built a track record. And one of my strategies this year is to, from social media and YouTube perspective, from a kind of intent-based type stuff, to recruit people that way. Obviously, you got to be careful with SEC rules, but ultimately, I will get lenders out of the information I'm providing. They'll
sure.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Bob, another guy that's in Investor Fuel, Bob, at one point I'm not taking any credit for it because he did the work, but I said, why don't you just because he was doing a lot of videos. Like, why don't you just go do a video that says, hey, we're recruiting for a new position in our team, and it's the position of private lender, and just do some videos around that. And he's like, he got all this money because he had one lender, and kind of like you, he had one lender that had been lending to him a lot, and then all of a sudden they put the brakes on it because they were doing something else with their money or something was going on with their business. And he's like, I just lost a bunch of my main lender, for the most part. And he's like, all of a sudden all these people came to me, people that I know, that I just had never asked them, or they didn't know that I was looking for lending. And, I think a lot of us are kind of surprised, or a lot of real estate investors are surprised at how much money really is around them if they just make people aware that it's a need that you have and there's a way that everybody can win.
Sure. And and really every time I've ever done a Facebook Live video where I've talked about private lending, inevitably one or two people private message me and like, hey, what is this about?
Right. How does this work? Yeah.
How does this work?
Yeah. Because a lot of people, let's be honest, there's a lot of people that are interested in real estate investing, but they're not willing to do the type of work that you and I have had to do over the years, rolling up our sleeves and getting our hands dirty, because at the end of the day, this is it's a harder business than what most assume. And if you're like, well, what if you could make a decent return and you don't even have to get your hands dirty? How's that sound?
Right. Yeah. And you're protected because I'm experienced enough that I'm buying these properties right. For my rentals, like I'm buying them I run my numbers at 75 of the value, right? I'm buying them 75% below market minus repairs.
Right.
So, they're protected there.
Yep.
And, so.
Yeah. Yeah. And neither one of us, for those of you who are listening, we know that neither Brad or I are attorneys, so you should always talk to an attorney about. But for sure, for the most part, like if you're doing it right and you're not, out to mislead anybody, the way we buy properties, there's usually a lot of equity in there. So the safest, the lenders should be pretty safe in the deal. The truth is for me, I mean, over the years, we've lost money on a couple deals, but my lenders never even knew it. Like I would never, you always want to protect your lenders. You don't ever want to go back and say, hey, you know what? I lost money on this deal, so you're going to lose money too. Like that's the end of that relationship and probably the beginning of a lawsuit. So
yeah, well, one of my main lenders, we lost money on a deal this past year. It was $2,000, or I lost $2,000, right? But they
right.
got paid back all their money.
Yeah, and they should, yeah.
And I ate the $2,000. I mean, it didn't really sting that much because it was $2,000, but still $2,000. It's still a loss, but I don't like to brag. It's not one you write home about, but
yeah, everybody has to decide whether you even need to disclose that. I'm not saying to be dishonest about it. It's like, don't let your lender know that, on one hand you could say, well, hey, I lost money, but I'm still going to make you whole. I'm not saying to mislead anybody, but I'm saying it's almost like they don't even need to know. You're going to take care of them no matter what, and they're never going to have to worry about it. That's kind of how it should be. So, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I ever screwed a lender or anybody. Like
I couldn't either. I have such my job for years, over a decade in corporate America, is I was a fraud investigator. Right?
Right.
My brain doesn't even, I can't even.
Yeah. My point is like, at the end of the day, any private lender, a seller, anybody that you work with in this business, from my perspective, I know you believe the same thing, is they're working with me because they trust me. And the last thing I'm going to do is lose my trust in somebody else that trusted me to get out of either to invest or to get out of a sticky situation.
Exactly. Yeah. So
let's talk a little bit about, managing properties. I know you're going through the process, your portfolio is starting to build up here a little bit. And I know you're kind of the engineering mindset, so you have a tendency sometimes to say, it's kind of like, move, I'll just do it. But managing properties sucks. I don't manage mine at all, and I never will. But let's talk about kind of those decisions of how to decide how you've processed it, I guess, to see what's right for you.
I have to think about it from my personality, for one thing. So I always bake in management into my numbers when I'm underwriting the deal anyways, right?
Yeah.
But I got to think about my personality too. Yeah, I'm very mechanical and I like to sort of figure stuff out. But at the same time, I'm kind of a passive sort of guy. Like I just kind of go with the flow. So
right.
Tenants will walk all over me. So
they will.
I'm too nice to people sometimes.
They will. It's like blood in the water. They're going to bite. You're going to get bit.
Right. So it would behoove me to hire, to use a property manager and a good one. And, you go through some are good, some are bad. Yeah. There's a lot of bad property managers out there. There's good ones too. So finding that one. But even with a property manager, still got to build systems around owning rentals, because you still got to manage the manager.
You have to manage the manager. That's right.
Right. Yep. And then you got to figure out a way to get, your accountant in touch with them there's other pieces. It's another business to build out. And then you get to the point, like, some of our buddies who have 100+ doors, well, it makes sense for them to hire a full-time person in the house and pay them a salary because they're paying more money to a property manager.
Oh, it either does or it doesn't. This is what I think. Everybody has a different thought on this. Here's what I think. The people that try to do it because they're cheap, like I'll just do it myself, like they need to look in the mirror and think about how much they value their time. Right. Because your time should be your most valuable resource. And if you're doing it to save money on something like that is like, you want to prematurely age and get gray hairs faster and sleep less at night, become a property, manage your own properties, But this is my general thought. I think property management needs to be run like a business, like a business that would support itself as a business, even if it didn't have your properties. So effectively, like, if you want to run a property management business, build it in a way to where you can manage other people's properties too. Because you'd be able to scale it a lot faster. Because like you said, at some point, if you wanted to bring them back in-house after you've outsourced it, you could look and say, well, hey, I'm paying my property management company $100,000 a year in property management. Could I build a small team out with that same expense and have more control? Maybe, right? So that's a decision you have to make. Yep. But you don't want to say, well, 10%, that's going to save me, $1,000. My rent's $1,000 a month, so I'm going to save $100 a month. by managing a property. It's like, but there's no scale. So it's like, you don't know what the laws are. You're going to be chasing people for checks. You don't have any processes in place for checks and turnovers and all that stuff. Like,
Yep.
your money is way better spent hiring somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yep. Exactly. I'm with you there.
Yeah.
But I'm not a super cheap person anyways. Like, I'm not like, I see the value in paying someone else. And it's been hard for me because always been much a DIY guy, but as I've become an investor and a business owner, I've realized that my time is valuable. And that's since I've had kids, my time is even more valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Well, at the end of the day, so you're a perfect example. I am too of a corporate refugee. Like, we left corporate America to take control of our time.
Yeah.
Do you really want to spend that time dealing with tenants? Like, you could do anything in the world. Is that really what you choose?
Exactly. So,
yeah. So Brad, you were one of the first members of Investor Fuel. You're at our very first meeting. I think the meeting we have coming up here in Nashville is our 10th meeting. So it'll effectively be, 2.5 years of Investor Fuel. You've been in for a long time, put your trust in us, and we definitely appreciate that. Could you maybe just share your thoughts of what Investor Fuel has kind of done for you, or a testimonial for those that might hear this and they haven't joined yet?
It's helped me evolve through my steps in my investing career. Because when I first started, I was just me, I was a solopreneur, and then I was still working a corporate job, and then helped me learn to build a team out. And then as I've evolved, we're talking about switching to cash flow. I'll still wholesale. I'll still run a wholesaling business. Maybe one day we'll shut it down like a friend of ours has done with theirs, but it's taught me how to evolve as an investor, and then also just built relationships, and there's so much value in it. It's totally worth the money and the relationships and the networking and the little tidbits here and there. And then also the variety of people in the group too is great, because we have some buy and hold guys, right? We have some creative finance guys. We have some wholesale guys. We have fix and flip guys. We have, note guys, like seeing things through all these different lenses too, and how you could or could not see yourself in that seat is great too. So, and then we all essentially have the same struggles. It's funny because like some of the things that we struggle about and talk about at our meetings, like I see some of the newbies posting about in like some of the Facebook groups, and we're all struggling with the same things, right? What's the best list? What's the, that sort of thing. But you get so much value out of that. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. We definitely appreciate you.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's funny. You go through these life cycle changes kind of in your level of business maturity too, right? You're like you mentioned recently here, we were talking is, about age of your kids, and you're kind of anticipating, hey, at different ages of my kids. Like I do the same thing. My son, we only have one, and my son's 12 now. And I think about that. I'm like, wow, I look back, and there's things I regret. Like there's things I missed out on because we were working hard. And now it's like, okay, well, we've got 6 years. Like, how are we going to use that? How are we going to let the business impact that, if at all? What experience do we want to have to make sure that, we don't look back and have regrets on things? So, right. But kind of where you are with your business and your family and your personal goals. And sometimes people look back and they're like, I started by doing this, and they're like, never again do I want to do that. Or I leaned into that more because it made more sense. Whatever it is, we're all, like you said, we all go through those same cycles and challenges and kind of find a way to fit it into our lives.
Well, it's funny because there's a lot of people within Investor Fuel that, started out as fix and flippers and have morphed their business into more of a wholesaling business, right?
Yeah.
Because they've like lost brain cells over dealing with contractors and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or it was funny, like on that same note, I might hire him as my accountant, but there's a local guy who just does investors for accounting in the Atlanta area. And he made a Facebook post recently, kind of when he finished up taxes last year. I guess it's been back in October when it was sort of the last deadline. Right. He said, public announcement, my wholesaler clients made more money than my fix and flip clients.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's funny. It's there's always with most of what we do, there's an asterisk next to it, right? Sure. Especially the financials. So awesome. Well, Brad, if folks want to learn more about you or kind of follow along with what you're doing, or just get to know you better, where can they connect with you?
So I'm on Facebook, Brad Woodall on Facebook. Just a picture of me with my wife and kids on the beach. And then I've got a YouTube channel, which I'm sort of starting to put some stuff on. It's Brad Woodall _REI. And then my company YouTube channel, I've done a bunch of videos. They're obviously more focused towards like long tail keywords for bringing in leads, but still some good content on there for Arborview Properties is my company. So you can kind of find me there. I'm on Instagram too, Brad K. Woodall. So that's kind of
awesome. I'm going to write all this down. So we'll add this in below the show notes if you guys find the show on investorfuel.com or on flipnerd.com. But we'll add all this stuff down in the show notes as well, all these links. So, well, Brad, appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Awesome. I enjoyed it. And it was
glad to see you. Your business is doubling every year. So you got, I don't know what your goals are. You don't have to say it here publicly, but what your goals are for 2020 we're at the beginning of the year here. So looking forward to hearing more about it, at least at Investor Fuel coming up here in a couple of weeks.
Definitely. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Everybody, thanks for joining us for today's episode. We're going to keep these coming at you. If you haven't already subscribed to the Investor Fuel Mastermind show, please do it anywhere where you're watching or looking at this now. If you got some value out of this, even maybe take a screenshot and just share it. You're welcome to tag me if you want to on Facebook or anywhere on social media. So appreciate you guys a ton. We'll see you on the next show. Are you an active real estate investor? If so, and you want to latch on to the power of surrounding yourself with over 100 of the nation's leading real estate investors, all committed to building stronger businesses and living richer, fuller lives, you should jump on a call with us to learn more about Investor Fuel. Simply visit investorfuel.com to get started.